The biggest key when you play against them is you've got to be able to pressure Stafford. And if you can do it with 4, that's great. If not, you're going to have to do it with 5. Because when he's comfortable, and he has been through 2 weeks, boy, he looks very, very good, Ross.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. That's because it is a teaching tutorial Thursday. The civilian GOAT, the NFL legend, Greg Cosell, is in the house. A lot of games to get to today as well as tomorrow. There is more injury news to get to after we talk with Greg, but you guys know the deal now. We get Greg Cosell, the NFL Films legend, not once, but twice. Every Thursday, every Friday, we break down as many games as we can get to with Greg, while also giving you the news that you need to know as we head into week 3 already in the NFL. Those of you watching can see I'm doing it from a Buffalo hotel room. I'll be on the call tonight on radio for the Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills for Westwood One, which I guess we might as well just start there. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
My guy Greg Cosell is presented by Liquid Death. I am obsessed with this stuff at this point. 6 months ago, I thought it was an energy drink. Now it's the best iced tea I've ever had. And my daughters, my wife, they love cracking open the cans for the water, which is hilarious. Love me some Liquid Death. Love me some Greg Cosell, especially when he gives me insight into my game. Tonight, Greg, we've got the Dolphins and the Bills. Really interesting. The Dolphins at least got their offense going against the Patriots on Sunday. Meanwhile, the Bills, that might be as little as I've ever seen Josh Allen have to do, Greg, in a resounding, blowout victory for the Bills. Not have to be. You've been talking on this show for years that it seemed like he always needed to be Superman. I feel like that's a good sign if they can win like that without Josh having to be Superman.
Well, that really changed last year, Ross, and I think a lot of people kind of lost track of that. Last year, they had one of the highest run percentages in the league in terms of run-pass ratio. And because, obviously, in critical moments in big games, it always seems as if Josh Allen is the one that they look to, which is probably fair. But in terms of how they structure their offense, they structure their offense to be extremely balanced. And because of what happened on the first Sunday night when Josh Allen brought them back in the fourth quarter, and threw for 251 yards in the fourth quarter alone in that game, everybody just assumed, it's Josh Allen or nothing. But that's not really, and I'm sure you've done your research, that's not really the way they play offense. They are a very, very balanced offense, and James Cook and the run game is a significant part of it, and they would love to be able to play that way pretty much every week. Now, it depends how games play out. Obviously, they got way ahead of the Jets last week, and they didn't need Josh Allen. But, they can win multiple ways. And I think, it's funny. In some ways, that's a segue into the Dolphins. I'll let you jump in here, but it's kind of a segue into the Dolphins.
Yeah, I want to get to the Dolphins. I did want to say, first of all, the Bills' offensive line is good, and it's cracking me up, Greg. They're using this rookie tight end who used to be at Yale, Jackson Hawes, as like an inline Y, and he's doing a heck of a job. And, I will say one of the things that fans know the least about in the NFL, Greg, is how valuable it is to have an inline Y that can block a defensive end one-on-one at the point of attack in the run game. That is a huge boost.
It's funny you mentioned Jackson Hawes, because if you've noticed through 2 games, their use of 6 O-line personnel, which they led the league in last year by a wide margin. I think they had about 150 snaps last year with 6 O-line personnel. Because of Jackson Hawes, that's decreased. And I didn't watch every single tight end, obviously, coming out in the draft. There's 50 of them, but I watched a good amount. And he was clearly the best blocking tight end coming out in this draft. And then think about what he did in the Sunday night game when he caught that seam ball down to the 1 yard line in their comeback in the fourth quarter. So obviously they don't see him necessarily as one of their receiving tight ends. But the point is, if he's on the field, he's still a receiving threat, which is different than Alec Anderson, their sixth offensive lineman. So that does adjust their offense. And your point about blocking DNs or outside backers, if it's a 5-2 front one-on-one, that's absolutely critical. If you can do that, it changes so much in a positive way about your run game.
You know, it's funny. I had a coach tell me that when they had first got in the league, they had a veteran coach who said to them, Greg, you'll be able to tell how good your running game will be based on how well your tight ends can block defensive ends.
There you go.
Like you'll be able to tell. And this coach has an excellent blocking tight end, and he said the exact point you just said, Greg, which is you can put a sixth offensive lineman out there, and that is effective. But if that guy's just a threat, and you can throw him some flats or on boots or check downs, but he can still at 260 do the job as blocking the defensive end. That is extremely valuable.
Well, it's funny. Just we talk and we go in tangents, so we'll get to other games. But I think the Eagles are finding that out a bit right now without Goddard, because Grant Calcaterra is really struggling to block defensive ends in the run game, and it's causing a little bit of an issue.
Sounds like, by the way, we'll get to that later on, but it sounds like Goddard might be back this week, which would be huge for the Eagles. Before we get to the Dolphins, I just have to ask this. What's going on with the Jets defense, Greg? I mean, I don't know if we're going to get to the Jets game or whatever. Maybe we will, but while it's fresh in my mind, I mean, that's 2 weeks in a row that they've kind of got lit up. That's supposed to be the strength of the team.
Yeah, I'm wondering with a new coaching staff if it's not being in meetings, if they're little subtle kind of fundamental mistakes, because they've got good personnel. I mean, I really like their edge players in McDonald and Jermaine Johnson. Obviously, they're good inside. I think their linebackers are solid. That's one of those things, and I'm being honest, I'm trying to figure that out. I don't know the answer to that question. The game this past week it's a tough game to really evaluate in that sense. I mean, the Bills, obviously Cook had a couple of long runs, and you could argue one of them, the touchdown, was just a great run by Cook. But they didn't really give up a ton of yards, and obviously they didn't have to deal with the pass game this week, so you can't say much about that. But I know week one, when they lost to the Steelers, they had a number of assignment miscues. And that can, a lot of times with a new coaching staff, Ross, as you well know, that gets worked through. It becomes a work in progress as the season unfolds.
Guess what? A lot of these teams are a work in progress on both sides of the ball right now. That's kind of what September's become. Speaking of that, you were going to say something about the Dolphins.
Well, it's funny. You talk about, we talked about the Bills, and they can win multiple ways. It's not always Josh Allen. I think that one of the things that really has to become a much bigger part of their offense is the run game, because Tua is a very narrow kind of player. When he's on with the way in which they play, he can only play a certain way. He must be a timing rhythm player in which he hits his back foot and the ball comes out. Okay, now in this game this past week against New England, for the first quarter and a half, he was playing way too fast mentally, and he was rushing through the reads and leaving clean throws on the field. Now, he settled down, and there were times in that game where he clearly looked like Tua. But he can only really play one way, and he doesn't really have the arm strength to make certain throws. I mean, he hit Hill on a long ball that should have been a 74-yard touchdown, and the ball just died. I mean, he can't make those throws sitting on his back foot. So they can only play really one way in the pass game, which means they have to have a run game. And they really don't up to this point. I mean, he had 37 dropbacks in a close game, Ross, and they only had 12 carries by backs. They can't play like that because the O-line's not good enough to play like that. It's a totally revamped O-line, by the way, as you well know. I'm sure you've studied it. I think the only remaining starter is Brewer, correct? Otherwise, it's 4 new starters. So
that's right.
It's a totally revamped O-line, and they can't play as a pure passing team.
More great stuff right after this. Man, I can't emphasize enough how awesome it is to be able to get tickets that you know are the guaranteed lowest price, and all the pricing, all the fees are included. That's what my friends at the Game Time app have done, which is why I'm such a huge, huge fan. I mean, they have tickets for as low as $100. Check out the closest NFL game to you or college football game. I think you'd be surprised at how inexpensive they can be, especially when you download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Ross to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm guaranteeing that the winner this week is someone that uses the Game Time app. So create an account, redeem code ROSS for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. After you make your purchase, forward it to me, ross@rosstucker.com. You know, think about the impact that Surfside has had on the world, and in particular, my life. It's tough to come out of nowhere and be something that I drink all the time, but that's the case. Now, there's a bunch of good flavors, a bunch of different good teas, a bunch of different good lemonades. My favorite is the combo. So it's vodka, iced tea, and lemonade. And those of you that were checking out my social media, especially over the summer, at Ross Tucker NFL, you saw I was all about it. It's only 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar, 0 bubbles. I love the no carbonation. Look for the can with the sunset stripes. It's sold at bars, restaurants, and stores near you. Must be 21. Please drink it responsibly. No, I think they've kind of decided that they just want to throw the ball. I'm surprised because McDaniel's background was always like run game coordinator.
Yeah.
But it's almost like they've decided, hey, we're just going to try to throw the ball, timing routes to Tua and Waddle, and then Achane out of the backfield, and that's what we're going to do.
And I thought what was fascinating in that game, and, you know, again, Buffalo, they'll play the way they want to play. They know this team really well, as does New England to some extent, but it's a new coaching staff in New England. Do you know that the Patriots pass defense, they rushed 5 on only 2 of the dropbacks by Tua. So what they did, because what do you have to do when you play Tua? You've got to take away windows. That's what he's a window thrower. So you want 7 in coverage, and they played almost all zone, almost no man. So they were playing to take away windows. They rushed 4 and wanted 7 in coverage.
Got to be honest with you, was not anticipating 10 minutes on the Dolphins and Jets, but Dolphins and Patriots and Bills, but that's how we do it.
It's good tactical football. That's what I love about this.
No, we got into the blocking tight end stuff. We got into the Jets defense. We did more stuff. But let's get to Bengals, Vikings.
Yeah.
What a difference a week makes. Thought it was going to be Joe Burrow and J.J. McCarthy. Instead, it is Jake Browning, who's done pretty well when he's gotten the opportunity for the Bengals, and Carson Wentz. It's interesting, Greg, because, you know, J.J. McCarthy finished that game, and on Thursdays I talked to Dr. Chow on the Second Even Money podcast episode, the one where we focus on line movement and injuries, as well as prop bets and parlays. And his thought is McCarthy could play. I mean, like, he could tape it up and play, and guys like Stafford and others would. But with the way he's playing, I think O'Connell doesn't want him out there unless he's 100%, with that ankle.
I'm always leery of in a sense, evaluating a quarterback playing for the first time after 2 games. I've heard a lot of talk this week, well, this proves McCarthy doesn't have it. I mean, let's be a little realistic here. I don't know what the future holds for J.J. McCarthy. No one does. But when he came out, first of all, I didn't think he was a first-round pick kind of player, but that's my evaluation of him. And I think that with him, it's going to take time. And, obviously he had the good second half or fourth quarter in week 1, and everybody loved him. And then this week he looked a little uncomfortable. Everything was too fast. And I think that's to be expected. So, we don't know the extent of the injury, but they have a backup who's had success in the league. I'm actually really anxious to see how Carson Wentz performs in this particular offense. He really hasn't played much in recent years. Obviously, his career at one point looked like he'd be a top 5 quarterback in the league, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out. So I'm really curious to see. To be honest, I don't know what to expect, Ross.
Got it. Well, I'm looking forward to it as well. I can't believe this is the sixth team he started for,
I know.
and the first quarterback to ever do that. I mean, first of all, I thought Ryan Fitzpatrick started for like 10 teams. Secondly, I didn't know this was the first time Wentz is doing this. I don't know. I don't even know what to say about the Bengals. Browning's,
No.
it seems like a big advantage, Greg, in the sense that Browning's been in that offense for
Yes.
years and is very comfortable. Wentz just got there 3 weeks ago.
I know. And it's a different offense than what he's used to. So it'll, because certainly he was in Kansas City a year ago, and that's a different style of offense. So I'm fascinated by it.
All right, let's talk about the Steelers and the Patriots. I guess in particular, Greg, the question everybody's asking in Pittsburgh, and I'm curious about it myself, is what is going on with the Steelers defensively? I mean, they've got they're supposed to have high-level players at every level. I mean, they got guys that have a lot of pelts on the wall, Hayward and Watt and Ramsey. What's going on there?
Last week was a really interesting game for them because I don't know if their coaching staff was surprised by what they saw. But when they played Seattle last week, I mean, you know how it is in this league, Ross. You pretty much prepare for teams. Most teams, in terms of personnel, do a lot of the same thing. There's only a few teams that might be different. But the Seahawks ran 64 offensive plays last week, okay? 45 of them came out of some form of base personnel. They hardly played any 11 personnel relative to the league. And I think that the Steelers ended up playing a lot of base defense. They actually played a lot of nickel against some base offense. And I think, again, I don't know if they were surprised by what they saw, but it was just a totally different offensive approach by the Seahawks versus that Steelers defense than my guess is than they probably expected. And, again, that doesn't excuse anything, but I just bet it was a totally different thing for them.
It's a good point. I think the perception is always that the Steelers are good against the run, so why would you come out and, have base personnel and try to run it at them, and maybe they weren't ready for it. That's a really interesting point.
Walker had a couple of longer runs, but they didn't play the run poorly. I mean, Charbonnet had 15 rushes for 10 yards. And while Walker's numbers looked great, 13 for 105, he had a couple of bigger ones. So they didn't really play the run poorly. It was an odd game. Don't forget there was that special teams miscue. Watching that tape, I came away feeling that it was more individual plays than an overall defensive malaise, so to speak. The first touchdown to Horton was I don't want to say they got screwed up, but it looked like one of those plays where it shouldn't have happened the way it happened, that the Steelers did not just see it the way you need to see it.
I do want to ask you about Drake May because it felt like it was one of the better games he played. But, then, of course, everybody's saying, well, that's the Dolphins' defense. They stink.
It's the NFL. I don't really look at things like that. I mean, the Dolphins' defense is not great, obviously. This to me is a really good example of and I've become more and more a believer in this the more tape I watch and the more people I talk to, the coaching helping the quarterback. I mean, they started that game with first two possessions, okay? They dialed up two really well-schemed pass plays that broke down the defense. One was Hooper, 22 yards on a misdirection throwback drag wheel. And then on 3rd and 4, they knew they were going to get man coverage. And they called the wheel route from an offset backfield alignment to Henderson for 15 yards. There was a legal pick by Henry on the linebacker. So, you dial that stuff up. You let your quarterback get in the game comfortably. You create first downs. But I thought May played well. I think he's played well through 2 weeks. He's a very comfortable player. He plays with poise and patience from the pocket. He did not force balls. He took the clean throws that sustained offense. I think his development is kind of progressing nicely.
Nice.
Not to say he won't have a bad game. People will hear that and think they don't have a bad game and go, you don't know what you're talking about. Obviously young quarterbacks have bad games.
No question. All right, let's get to a game. I'm actually surprised that this game is a Sunday 1 p.m. game. This seems like it should be the featured game. Instead, the Cowboys and the Bears
Yeah.
is the featured game for Fox on Sunday. But how about the Rams and the Eagles? They're both undefeated. They had that epic playoff game in the snow last year. I know you obviously watch every snap the Eagles play for all the stuff you do in Philadelphia. Talk to me about, obviously there's a lot of consternation about the Eagles offense right now, but I'm curious your thoughts on the Rams and the Eagles.
Yeah, this game we could talk about for an hour. I mean, the Rams are always a difficult offense to decide how you want to play against them because there's so much motion. There's so much pre-snap movement. There's a lot of reduced splits, which, change the way you play defense. It's funny. Vic Fangio has been doing this a long time. And last week I watched the Eagles-Chiefs game, and obviously they played in the Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl, a game in which they never rushed 5, and they played literally out of a quarter structure on every snap. So what did Fangio do this week against the Chiefs? For him, heavy blitz, and they played a ton of man coverage. And, he just went about it totally, totally differently than what he did in the Super Bowl. So, I don't know how he'll play this game. With all the pre-snap movement that the Rams do, at times it's hard to match up. I will say this: the movement receiver in their offense is Nakua. Adams is the much more stationary receiver. And for instance, the Titans last week, they matched up L'Jarius Sneed on Adams because he's the stationary receiver. People said, well, why didn't they do it on Nakua? Because Nakua moves all the time. And it's tough to do a singular matchup on a player that moves all the time. So I don't know what Vic's going to do here, but they're a tough offense to play against. The biggest key when you play against them is you've got to be able to pressure Stafford. And if you can do it with 4, that's great. If not, you're going to have to do it with 5. Because when he's comfortable, and he has been through 2 weeks, boy, he looks very, very good, Ross.
What about the other side, Greg? Obviously, it doesn't really feel like the Eagles' offense is firing on all cylinders, and people are pretty frustrated about it.
Yeah, it's... I think there's a lot of things going on here. I think that Kevin Patullo is kind of learning on the fly. He's the new coordinator. I think when you call plays in games for the first time, don't forget he didn't work with Jalen Hurts in a game in the preseason, as you well know. So that's an adjustment right there. Jalen Hurts, I think, has had 6 offensive coordinators in his career. The pass game has been very static, very conservative. A lot of quick rhythm throws. They haven't worked much down the field at all. They've run a lot. They've repeated a lot of plays. They've been somewhat repetitive. Some could say that's predictable. When it works, it's great. When it doesn't, people say it's predictable. This past week, I thought, based on my interpretation of what I was looking at, I thought there were 4 or 5 times where Jalen had his eyes in the wrong place based on how the coverage presented itself when he took the snap, and therefore it just slowed down the processing. But he's also has not worked outside to the one-on-ones the way we've seen him do pretty much his entire career. And again, I can't tell you why that is, but there were times where there were one-on-ones on the outside where he didn't turn it loose. He didn't look there. So I don't know the answer to that, but their pass game has obviously not been very good.
Let's get to one more game. It's my game for CBS. The red-hot Colts against the Tennessee Titans. Curious to hear really about both these teams, Greg.
I think another great example of how coaching and the quarterback and the team really come together. Because, as you study the game, I'm sure, to some extent, is the Colts have a good offense. They've got a quality O-line. They've got 4 good wideouts. They've got one of the top 5 runners in the league. They've got multiple tight ends. Tyler Warren has obviously shown up, but they've got more than one tight end, so they can line up in multiple personnel packages. They can protect Daniel Jones, who's essentially a pocket quarterback at his core. He's not a great mover within the pocket, so if you can have him comfortable within the pocket and stand and deliver, and I think Steichen's done a really good job of defining clean reads and clean throws for him, and he just looks like a comfortable player. He throws a good ball. He's always thrown a good ball. So we'll see if it continues. On the other hand, I think the Titans, this might sound crazy to say, I think there's a little encouragement here. They've played 2 really good teams, and quite frankly, they've played them well in 2 games. Now, it's fallen apart a little bit in the 4th quarter, which is often the case with young teams, as you well know. Maybe you've been in that situation. But I think they've actually hung together and played pretty well, and I thought Cam Ward played meaningfully better in the second game than he did in the first game.
Ooh, in what ways?
Just his comfort level. One of the things with young quarterbacks, and this is not a stat, so you're never going to see this in metrics, is what they have to learn, and Caleb Williams has to learn this as well. They have to really learn two things: what pressure is and isn't in the NFL, because there are way more bodies around you in the NFL than there are in college. And that doesn't automatically mean it's pressure, as you well know, Ross, having been an offensive lineman. And you also have to then understand versus zone coverage what's open versus not open, because the windows are going to be tighter. So you have to understand what are viable throws against zone coverage. And a lot of quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, don't turn it loose because they don't see those throws as viable throws when they really are.
Greg, you are the man. Already fired up for tomorrow's show. A bunch of good games, including Monday Night Football, Lions, Ravens. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ross.
All right, let's dive into the news. But first, there is nothing better than game day. I mean, you think about it, the noise, the smells, the passion. It's the experience, right? The tailgating. I don't care if you're tailgating or you're just hosting at your house or you're just watching it with your crew. Choose Smirnoff. I'm telling you, no game day is complete without the world's #1 vodka. It is a perfect vodka for crafting delicious cocktails, easy to make and versatile for any and all fans over 21. Grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com to find recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, several notes around the league. Jets quarterback Justin Fields, he's out this week. The Cardinals, they placed defensive lineman L.J. Collier and DB Garrett Williams on IR, both with knee injuries. And Washington, they signed edge rusher Preston Smith, while the Chargers, they put their edge rusher Khalil Mack on IR.
Yeah, a couple things there. I mean, maybe I'll go in reverse order. Khalil Mack on IR means he's out at least 4 games. But, it sounds like it's a dislocated elbow, but he'll be back. I think all in all, that's actually encouraging for the Chargers that they're going to get Khalil Mack back later this year. For the Commanders, losing Dietrich Wise, they wanted to bring in another D lineman for the rotation. So that's where Preston Smith fits in. For the Cardinals, Garrett Williams, he's a player they really, really like. So that's a big loss for them to not have him. He can play outside. He can play inside. He can play safety. I think you'll see more of Rabbit Taylor Demerson, another player they like. And for the Jets, it's just amazing in week 3 how many backup quarterbacks. We talked about Carson Wentz and Jake Browning, now Tyrod Taylor. It's why backup quarterback is such an important position. Week 3, and there's already a bunch of guys that have to play this week. Other than that, Greg Cosell back tomorrow. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com, Sporticulture, then, of course, Pizza Boy Brewing, HumanHeadNYC.com, BackOfficeScheduler.com.